Okay, start a team. Hey guys. It's been quite some time. Alright, let's go ahead and get you guys ready for your sortie today. First up is Repulse, here, perfect. Ghost Boat is here as well. And Yorktown is looking quite nice today, but it's here as well. Perfect. Okay, Norfolk, you're here, and Leffy is here as well. And, hang on guys, I gotta go get our last member and drag her out here, okay? I'll be right back. Sandy! I told you we were going to be sorting with your old group today. Alright, now with that scuffle out of the way, let's get into the last backliner of my starter squad, a well-known carrier from the Eagle Union, USS Yorktown. Now, Yorktown was one of the original characters that was in Azur since day one, so she does have some seniority over a handful of carriers that have been slowly added over the past couple of years. The question now, though, is, does that seniority work in her favor, or does it pale in comparison to the newer characters that have been added? Well, let's find out. For this particular review, I'll compare against her sisters, Enterprise and Hornet. I know there's a rarity difference between Enterprise, so please keep that in mind that the stats will, by default, favor Enterprise. However, since Enterprise is pretty well known, and her sister after all, she still makes a somewhat decent comparison to Yorktown despite the rarity difference. Now, starting with survival stats however, Yorktown's health pool is a little bit over 5,000. While a bit behind Hornet and a decent bit behind Enterprise, it's still somewhat close to them. So while she may not be able to deal with damage as well as her sisters, she'll still do decently despite that difference. Now her medium armor means that she'll be able to somewhat handle certain attack types, but will definitely suffer drastically from BBAP shots, so it's probably a good idea to use the airstrikes to prevent any of the attacks of the AP variety from hitting the back line. Now, while it does tie Hornet, Yorktown's evasion is somewhat close to Enterprise, so while she doesn't beat her, the difference in their chances to evade attacks is somewhat similar. Lastly, Yorktown sits in the middle of her sisters with anti-air, so they're all about equally capable of tanking air-based attacks. Overall, aside from the rarity difference, Yorktown is doing her best to keep up with her sisters. She's still quite tanky herself considering her health, evasion, and anti-air. But how does her offense stat line hold up against her sisters? Yorktown has a bit of a difference in aviation, so she's going to lose to both Hornet and Enterprise in plane damage a bit. Both her and Hornet's reload is a tad bit lower than Enterprise, so this just means that they'll be a little bit slower at getting their planes out as well. So Yorktown isn't doing too great at the beginning right here with just stats alone, but equipment-wise, well, that could change things. Speaking of which, I need to quickly remind everyone that not all carriers run the same exact plane loadouts. Some will have all three plane types, while others may only have two of the three. Heck, some may have an AA gun on them, or a few of them have an actual gun in their arsenal. I mean, some do it well, and others... What? Anyway, Yorktown carries all three plane types, and upon limit break runs a 3-3-2 setup. For those that aren't entirely sure what that means, she runs 3 fighters, 3 dive bombers, and 2 torpedo bombers at max limit break. Now, both of her sisters also carry the exact same loadout as well. Nonetheless, all 3 sisters run their fighters, dive bombers, and torpedo bombers with a 125% efficiency. Now, for fighters, that efficiency feels, I'd say about average. But for torpedo bombers and dive bombers, it's a little bit below average when we look at all things considered. This just means that between the sisters themselves, they're going to be competing based on equipment levels, aviation stat, and the skills that they have for themselves as well. Against other elites, their fighter game might be decent, but their bombing game might lose to a few of the ship girls. So, overall, Yorktown seems to be the weaker of the Yorktown sisters, but that doesn't mean that she's terrible overall. Looking at her stats at level 120, she gets a pretty balanced bump to all of her stats in general. But this really doesn't change her standing compared to Hornet or Enterprise. And sadly, the same can be somewhat said at level 125. So while the stats aren't really doing much to make her look better than her sisters, well, her skills could make a huge difference here. So let's see exactly how that fares out instead. Yorktown's first skill is Vengeance, which does two major things. The first being that when she is attacked and takes damage, she retaliates with a dauntless squadron of her own. The damage of this particular airstrike is dependent on the skill's level and has an internal cooldown of 20 seconds. So don't expect her to be sending a free airstrike every time she's hit. That's not how that works. Now, the other bit of this particular skill occurs when her health falls below 20%. When this happens, she'll recover up to 25% of her own health. Do note that this only occurs once per battle, so it's not like she's gonna be unkillable. Now, while damage your backline takes isn't exactly the best scenario to be in, Yorktown having a retaliation strike does give her some decent free damage for her just simply taking a hit. The damage, of course, can be mitigated by bringing a healer like Riohol or Perseus who can heal the backline. And I'm pretty sure a good number of people aren't going to be happy if you're purposely letting Yorktown get hit for that extra damage output. I wouldn't think that'd be a good idea. Now, the healing bit she does have is actually a bit nice. In a sense, she's a carrier that runs a similar function to our mini zombie-type ship girls. This can be a bit handy if you're running a no-healer grind fleet, but again, it's still not the best thing to let her get that damaged. Not to mention, I'm pretty sure the same people who would get mad at you for purposely damaging her would probably still be slightly upset over you letting her get that low in health. To be fair though, the skill gives her some extra survivability, but I honestly think it shouldn't be relied on too much. Now, her last skill is Fleet Carrier, which increases the damage your Vanguard ships deal by up to 15% for 8 seconds. It's important to note that this skill does not stack with any other ships that use this particular skill, so keep that in mind if you're bringing Saratoga or Lexington around with Yorktown. This buff for your Vanguard is definitely nice and can make a difference with the right Vanguard characters nowadays. I guess its only downside is that it will step on the other characters that also use this skill, so it's kinda best not to bring them with her. I guess if you wanted to, you could stagger their attacks for 8 seconds and just keep the buff constantly active at all times, but I don't know if that's exactly the best way to play that. That's entirely up to you though. Nonetheless, the buffing is very nice and appreciated for your very damage-focused vanguards. In the end, Yorktown might not be the strongest of her class, but she does have a support role with her skills that she plays rather than being a damage dealer like her sisters Hornet and Enterprise. Now, the healing skill technically means that she will have more health than both Enterprise and Hornet, so she'll be a bit more tanky in that regard, but it's again something that shouldn't be relied on too much. She does try her best to help where she can and does provide a lovely damage buff to her Vanguard that can help out in the long run. So she does get a little bit of points for supporting her fleet mates to the best that she's able to. Now, does this mean boss or mob fleet backline? Well, I'd say she'd be best in the mob fleet as she's definitely not great for damage output, and of course for a boss fleet that's kinda needed. Sadly, there are a lot of carriers that are also very effective in the backline for both sides as well. This kinda means that her seniority doesn't exactly help her in the end. So one might ask, why would you consider using Yorktown? Well, I am very much in support of waifu over meta, so if you want to use her, then go on ahead. Another argument could be for newer players that just happen to get her like I did. She definitely won't let you down as a starting carrier, so feel free to use her in that regard as well. At the end of the day though, while she may not be the strongest of the Yorktown sisters, she does try her absolute best. For some, that's really all they need out of their waifu ship girl. And I'll say this, I love that Battle Pass skin. Seeing her smile, that's something that I've been wanting to see from her. So enjoy that, those of you who claim her as your waifu. And that'll be all for Yorktown. Hope you have enjoyed this and that it will help you in your future endeavors. Up next is the speedy bun bun herself, Shimakaze. So look forward to her video when that time comes. Whether you're a regular viewer or a patron supporting the channel on Patreon, thanks for watching and I'll see you guys all again real soon.